along with our student
Recording in
representatives.
progress.
And if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I was hoping to give Mr. Testani some space to make an important announcement.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate it. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the staff members and some community members who at a recent Fairfield Ward High School St. Joseph's boys freshman basketball game on Friday evening. During the game, one of the officials suffered a medical emergency. And I just want to express my sincere gratitude to the staff members, athletic director Gina DiGiacomo, site coordinator, one of the deans over at Ward, Matt Narwhal, and one of our trainers who we hired this year as part of our staff, Henry Peterson, Hank as we call him, also one of our coaches' wives who stepped into action, and one of the parents who, through their extraordinary heroic efforts and quick actions and immediate medical attention, stabilized the gentleman until paramedics arrived within about 5 minutes. So the response time of our paramedics here in town as well, and in essence saved this gentleman's life. So we are truly blessed to have such dedicated individuals who are selfless and really take all their training and all their knowledge into play when the moment struck. And because of that, their efforts, we do save a life on Friday evening. So they could not be here tonight. We do have basketball games tonight, so they're currently on site, but we will bring them here at a later time in the spring when season's over and we can get them here, and they really acknowledge them properly. But I did want to not let that get by because I think there's a lot of buzz around the community about what happened, and it truly heroic. I stepped in moments after when I arrived, saw the video, and really everybody to a T acted in what you would say you would expect in a drill or something like that. But this happened in real time. So I just want to thank them for their actions.
That was fantastic. Thanks so much for letting us know and to letting the public know. I think they should be lauded for their efforts.
Absolutely.
And sorry to take the wind out of the sails of the student reports, but let's move on to those.
I hope you all had a delightful holiday break with friends. To begin, on Monday, our principal, Mr. Cavanna, shared a letter highlighting the cap and gown ordering process, diplomas, senior prom, the graduation date being set by you all. Furthermore, it will be reviewed with the senior class on Wednesday during the Google Meet, as well as the upcoming senior badminton tournament on the first day.
The Fairfield Ward High School Counseling Department launched the post-high school planning process for the junior class. The program was this Monday with a student presentation for all juniors at 8:15 a.m. in the auditorium. The presentation was also live streamed. Following the presentation, Mr. Brown will share a letter outlining the resources available to support families throughout this process, and the communication will also be provided instructions on how families can schedule a personal appointment with their school counselor.
Next up, a senior parent group will be donating a gift each month to seniors until graduation, starting off tomorrow with gift certificates to Bagel King. On behalf of the class of 2025, the seniors currently, my apologies, I would like to sincerely thank this senior group.
Tomorrow, we will be following a special schedule that includes an activity period from 1:50 to 2:10 p.m. And it will be a great opportunity for our students to be more involved in our community.
Finally, midterm exams will begin next Tuesday, January 14th, including on Friday before the long weekend celebrating Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you.
Every student and staff at WFC were given a gift bag for the holidays filled with honey, soap, and lip balm. Students helped design and produce the first WFC hoodie. All the students were given new WFC hoodie as a gift for the holidays. Students in all English classes participated in the Martin Luther King Jr. essay sponsored through Senator Chris Murphy's office. Topic for the essay contest was to explain how MLK Jr.'s vision influences our own visions or aspirations for the future. Before the holiday break, our science teacher borrowed lab equipment, Jackson Labs, to teach students lab skills, pipetting, and scanning DNA and gel electrophoresis. Our first semester is coming to a close, and students are meeting with meeting with our school's counselor to review our on-track credit performance and determine course selections for the second semester. At the end of the semester, we are planning to celebrate our January graduates with a small festive send-off.
Senior t-shirts. So every year the senior class creates a t-shirt for the students, especially the senior photos and other class events. The t-shirts are on sale through the ASF website until January 12th, and all proceeds will go towards prom expenses. The t-shirts are $15 for short sleeves and $20 for long sleeves. This Friday, we will be having our Word Sports and Activity pep rally. All students collect in the gym, and teams get to sit together and share important information regarding the schedules, any senior nights, senior night dates, board Ludlow games. So that's really fun. A lot of cheer in there. And then we have midterms, which will start on the 14th of January and they'll end on Friday the 17th. Students are currently preparing for tests, and we've gotten a lot of resources through our Google Classroom to help us prepare. The annual Gap Year Fair is this Thursday, January 9th at Ford High School. It's from 6 to 8:30. And we have our blood drive results. That was last year. That took place in December. So we were donated 19 units of blood, and each donation can save up to 3 lives. So when you think about it, it's potentially 57 lives we're saving with the blood donated. And Wednesday is college planning night for junior parents. We'll meet with Dr. Hatzis and Ms. Montworsi get to talk about college stuff. And Thursday is advisory. All 4 grades will be working in School Links, the college and career planning portal. Grade 9 is doing a scavenger hunt to learn about how to use School Links and navigate through the website. 10 is working on building a resume. Juniors will be doing some college exploration, and seniors will be updating their college application process.
Great. Any board questions or comments?
I just had a comment. I wanted, thank you for bringing up the midterm exams. I know in the past they've been sometimes a source of anxiety for students. And I just wanted to thank our administrators and staff for the support they give to both students and families through that process to help students be organized and get through it in a way that feels positive for everyone.
I'll just say that we're all downhill to June from here, and graduation day is going to come much sooner than you expect. So everyone enjoy their time. Enjoy this time that you're spending here at the Board of Ed. And thanks for your updates. All right. We'll move on to item 4, public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to come up to the table and address items that are on our agenda tonight. Everyone has up to 3 minutes. Just give us your name and address and go.
My first time here, so I'm getting instructions to everybody.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Emma Kay, and I guess I have to say my address, which is 524 Sturgis Road. I am the co-VP of Sustainability for the PTA Council, along with Lisa Alberts, who couldn't be here tonight, and I am a longtime member of Sustainable Fairfield. I came tonight to speak in support of including cafeteria composting for all elementary schools and grades 6 and 7 in the 2025-2026 budget. Since beginning the program with 3 schools in 2022 and increasing to all 11 elementary schools and grade 6 over the past 2 years, Fairfield schools have diverted more than 820,000 pounds of food waste. That means instead of sending 820,000 pounds of heavy, wet food waste to be incinerated In our neighboring town of Bridgeport, we helped nourish local farms and gardens with rich compost. Maybe even more important than the incredible service to our environment are the values we are teaching our students. Caring for our earth, taking responsibility for our individual actions, and working together as a team to make a difference. Many of these students question why composting isn't available everywhere, and many of them are encouraging their families to take action at home. I personally love being in the cafeteria and seeing the students help each other to make sure that their trash is being sorted into the correct bins, making sure not only their cafeteria is clean, but also their air, soil, and water. PTA Council and supporting parents worked tirelessly to make this program successful. They've raised more than $50,000 and they've spent hundreds of hours in schools teaching students and staff how and why we should be doing this important work. We will continue to devote our time and energy, but we hope that our future fundraising can be used for new projects so that sustainability in our schools continues to grow and adapt. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments on tonight's agenda items? And just note for the public that when something comes up for a vote, you can speak then, but you can only speak once on a topic.
Oh, I can't speak on two topics.
You can't speak on the same topic twice.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Ellie Fatehi, 98 Flora Boulevard. So as you review the library media curriculum, please consider evaluating the quality and quantity of educational technology during the school day. Research shows that teachers are powerful and that teacher-directed instruction produces above average results, while the typical uses of technology, such as one-on-one laptops, web-based learning, gamification apps, show negative academic results. Providing kids with technology in the classroom has not demonstrated any improvement in reading or math outcomes. We now know that in our youngest learners, fast-paced media is linked to impaired executive function and lowers their ability to delay gratification. Screens are also attributed to a decrease in fine motor skills and replace other real-world activities that enhance child development. We know that children learn better with print, and exposing them to reading on screens diminishes their reading ability and comprehension. As a population, creativity is declining, specifically in our youngest learners, K through 6, who are at the highest risk. 1 hour of screen time daily has been shown to decrease rates of curiosity. The curriculum cites a digital library, reading applications, streaming videos, and graphic design editing tools starting in kindergarten. Little kids are expected to log on to their FPS user accounts, select applications, and practice mouse touchpad skills as early as kindergarten. These kids cannot read and can barely hold a pen. Our youngest learners need more print, more exposure to holding and writing with a pencil, and increased in-person collaboration and play. I would encourage the board to not approve the curriculum as is and to reevaluate the need for educational technology in the youngest learners, including the following: removal of the graphic design editing tool to prioritize pen to paper, removal of the digital books and audiobooks to prioritize print media and reading, removal of streaming videos to prioritize in-person engagement, removal of web-based audio and video editing tools to prioritize print and handwriting, removal of web-based productivity and collaboration software to prioritize in-person collaboration. Screens can become habitual and pervasive, and delaying screens in our elementary school kids would increase their overall academic, social, emotional, and health-related outcomes. I would encourage you to evaluate the use of screens throughout the day, starting with the library media curriculum, and set a limit for tech use within an overall technology policy. Please see the supplemental document entitled the Ed Tech Report that I emailed you on December 20th for reference to my comments above. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Lauren Efren, 231 First Street, Board Co-President and RLMS Board of Ed Rep. If you don't mind, I have a printout, a graph from an email that I sent to all of you, and it just highlights the number of classes per year that the LMC has and the different units. With those, I think it just better illustrates exactly how much time is actually spent on technology. We actually believe that that's correct, that it's more than time, which is what Dr. Janczek has confirmed, and I believe Dr. Sostrom presented at the November 26th meeting. I think half of the time in LMC is too much time spent on a screen, especially for our youngest learners. I want to illustrate that among the literature that they recommend, approximately 2 per grade, there are only books that deal with digital technology recommended for elementary school. I have here Chicken Clickin', unless anybody wants to take a look. Unplugged Ninja. That's what we're teaching to our kindergartners in library media curriculum. Staying safe online. Fact versus opinion versus robot. Couch potato. Old MacDonald had a phone. Mitzi and the Big Bad Nosy Wolf, sorry. Online safety for young children. And Goldilocks, a hashtag cautionary tale. The Nantucket Sea Monster, a fake news story. Technology Tale, a digital footprint story. Mad for Ads, how advertising gets and stays in our heads. And Chicken Little, Very Long Race. Again, all about technology. What are we teaching our kids? What is the value of walking into a library full of books if we are directing them to the screens instead? What if in the future, we just put QR codes on everything? And instead of a child ever having to take a book off the shelf, they simply scan it and look it up on their personal device. I'd ask you to consider that the Board of Ed has just created a new curriculum subcommittee. It has been permitted to work on curriculum. Informed parents have only been kept to 3 minutes tonight, in addition to only 3 minutes at the last meeting. This is for the next 10 years. What's the rush? Let the newly formed committee do its work.
Hi, my name is Rosie Rao. I'm at 42 Osborne Place in Southport. So thank you all for your time. Brought a couple of notes. This one is particularly personal for me because I have both a second grader and a kindergartner. I agree with everything that Ellie and shared and that they've sent to you guys in detail. I think the biggest headline to me is really the need for philosophy around technology. And I know we've talked about this, we've mentioned it last time, and I'm mentioning it again today because I think it's so important. Landing that plane, I do think then really has the LMC really encompassing for it, right? I think the opportunity to ease in, to the technology element among elementary schools in particular is really critical. As I think about really kindergarten through second, for example, and there are quite a number of examples from, reading the policy. There's quite a bit around the curriculum, like for example, and I can send you the list, but there's so many sections where I think you could very easily just say, all right, how do we look at this and revisit and maybe streamline to say, all right, it's easing into technology. Maybe K through 2 doesn't need to start with that same proficient example, of 1.1D, 2.2B, 5.1 A through C. Like there's a lot of examples along the curriculum that I think really could be streamlining and really easing in particular K through 2, and just have more distinction between what the kindergartner's capability or intention is meant to be versus the 5th grader. I would encourage us to revisit the LMC and identify which opportunities that we could find a way to ease that entertainment of technology as that approach. Really for me, my youngest Fiona, she can't read. She literally asks me how to spell the word house. She does not know anything, and I had to think about her as I was reading through all of it. And just everything that Ellie and Lauren just really, really it registers with me that we have to get back to the in-person reading. And I think about the examples for myself growing up and how I sat and listened to someone read to me in the library. I just think there's so many opportunities, and I think there's a lot of really solid examples that have been shared with you guys. But happy to partner with really anybody within the team that can find a solution that has more of that easy, streamlined approach. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Great, thanks for your comments. We'll move on now to presentations. Superintendent proposed 2025-2026 operating budget.
So before we get started, I do want to start by saying that for all those in the public that are listening that are not here, and some of the other town bodies that will be part of the approval process of the Board of Education budget as we go through this. This is a budget that is really heavily focused on maintaining current levels of quality education and opportunities for academic, social, and emotional growth. As we've heard in the past, there are no bells and whistles or, wish we had. So I've heard that term in other meetings that we've had in previous budgets. So I want to start by saying we've worked extremely hard in maintaining our current level of staffing and our current level of service to our students and our families in this budget. Not going to read the mission of the Fairfield Public Schools, but I just want to emphasize that these goals were in mind as we plan our strategic use of our resources and develop the budget priorities for the upcoming school year and also well into the future. I want to thank members of the Board of Education, our executive team, and also Rachel for working extremely hard, our Director of Communications, on helping put together this wonderful PowerPoint, and all the people that support our students. So an overview, what are our critical investments here, mandates and services that we need to provide, and what efficiencies could we find in order to offset some of the increasing costs. I want to thank our dedicated teachers and administrators for inspiring our students and preparing them for a successful future. Maintaining and attracting top educators was a critical piece to our budget. We talked a lot about this last year as we were preparing for the new teachers contract and administrators contract, that we wanted to provide and reward our staff so that we can maintain the consistency of education throughout the district. And I think this budget does that. This budget heavily supports the educators and staff that support our students so that they can thrive in today's world, but also the staff that they deserve. So we're going to get right into it. The proposed budget increase is 6.45% over the current budget. That would bring us to a current total budget of $234,425,554. That being said, we will discuss a little bit later. We do have some exposure in this budget for some unknowns, but we're hopeful that we have built in some contingencies that could possibly offset some of the unknowns that are yet to come. Main high quality education in Fairfield schools, which we're known for, we must invest strategically in competitive salaries and benefits, key infrastructure, and critical instructional resources for our staff. At the same time, we've proactively identified operational efficiencies in areas such as utilities, print management, information technology support, and maintenance cycles to offset costs wherever possible. So the theme of this budget is a balancing act between investments and operational efficiencies. The bulk of this budget is to fund the teacher's contract and all the benefits that go along with that. Investing in a high-quality teaching staff means ensuring that our students have access to the best possible educators who are well-prepared, supported, and motivated to succeed. This includes competitive salaries to attract, retain talented teachers, professional development opportunities, keep staff up to date, and best teaching practices. Also provide resources they need to deliver effective instruction. For a school budget, this investment is essential because teachers are the most significant factor in determining the success of students. We prioritize our quality teaching staff in this budget, directly investing in better outcomes for our students, stronger supports for diverse learning needs, and positive enriching school environments that prepare students for a global future. Looking at this, the majority, 6.31% of the 6.45 are fixed costs that are essential and unavoidable. And we have contractual obligations not only to our teachers, our administrators, but also our custodians, our clerical staff, and our other support staff, paraprofessionals. We also are estimating, we built in 8% because that is what we're getting from the state this year for health insurance benefits on the increase in our plan. Unlike in years past, I would be very hesitant to expect any reduction to that. Actually, we're being told there could be possibility of it coming in a little bit higher. So that's one of the risks of exposure that we have since we built the budget. But we're pretty confident that that 8% number will hold steadfast. But again, the last couple of years, we've been lucky because that number has come down when the official state budget was adopted. We've been told at this late stage of the game, we shouldn't count on that. And I think we'd be foolish if we did, just based on the number of districts that have jumped back into the Connecticut Partnership Plan, especially districts here in Fairfield County. Also, they've seen an increase to claims, especially in this end of the state as well. That's contributing us to factor that this is going to be a pretty steady number going forward. We also have essential projects that we'll talk a little bit about at two of our schools that we concluded. And I think the board has been made aware of these two projects in previous board meetings. And we've had to account for inflationary impacts on operational costs, especially in our maintenance department. The cost of goods and services and preventative maintenance, we built in about 5% to that. That's what we're seeing as we've gone out to order supplies and use our contracted services moving forward. So again, the teacher's contract alone accounts for 6.4 million. Insurance is about 3.4 million, and other contracts. And we've also talked a lot about in the last couple of years that we've seen an increase to the number of dollars we're spending on substitute teachers during the course of the year. So we did increase that number this year to help account for what we've seen in those trends over the last couple of years. So altogether, just in those areas alone, that's driving about 4.71% up to 4.5. We also want to just mention that because of the teacher's contract, we've also encouraged our teachers to go back to school as we opened up the 7th-year lane in our last negotiations, as you're all aware of. And many of our teachers, we're accounting for all the teachers that have put in for lane changes for next year, completing their coursework in time for the start of the school year. We could see some savings if not all of that coursework gets completed and that gets pushed out for an extra year. But we don't want to put ourselves at risk in case that everyone does successfully complete their credit hours. The remaining part, and about 25% of the overall budget increase goes to special education support and mandated services, transportation, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation, and then maintenance and utilities. Also, the increasing costs there account for the remaining about $3.5 little over $1 million in the proposed budget for next year. As we've seen over the last couple of years, we've seen a trend in the prevalent rate of students being referred, qualifying for special education services. Therefore, service provided need to be increased, as well as programmatic needs. The budget also includes current and anticipated outplacements, unilateral placements, related service needs, revenue decline that we expect, slight but not much in excess cost for next year. The number we're getting from the state just reduces our budget or our reimbursement probably by about $3,000, which isn't much, but we've seen a steady decline over the last couple of years in the excess cost grant. I know that's going to be a hot topic as they enter the next legislative session. I don't anticipate increase to that, especially to districts such as ours, but we'll stay tuned and hope that our legislative delegation, as well as many of the legislators that have seen this impact their districts, especially at this end of the state, put up the good fight as we move forward. We went into critical investments. Sorry, I hit the button twice. So again, retention and recruitment of teachers, we have seen a positive impact of the new teachers contract here in Fairfield. We did not have to hire as many teachers this past summer. We aren't carrying the vacancies that we've seen since COVID. We do have a couple of openings in shortage areas that we are contracting out services for, but we are fully staffed otherwise, which I think is directly attributed to the increase in the compensation and retaining our teachers, and recruiting those that left the district due to retirement, possibly other endeavors, was not an issue this year. And that includes areas like mathematics, science, and special educators, as well as speech language pathologists, which we've had a difficult time over the last several years, and other districts continue to struggle with. I've been receiving calls from colleagues if I could give any referrals of staffing, especially in the area of mathematics and science. We even hired a physics teacher this summer. That is very difficult to find. So very proud of work that our HR department, building administrators are doing. But I think this is a direct correlation to what we've been able to do to finally catch up and be competitive to our neighboring districts. We do have a couple of maintenance projects, as I mentioned earlier. There is an aging elevator over at Fairfield Ludlow High School that continually is down, which limits access and mobility for some of our students. So that is one of the projects here that's in the maintenance line. We also have fire safety update at Roger Ludlow Middle School that needs to be done. These are some possibilities we can discuss if we want to look at this from a capital perspective, but I think these are definitely items that we've included in this budget, unless the board seeks other projects done. And again, we're focused on maintaining reliable technology by adding protective charging stations for our younger students. Talked a lot about several board meetings ago about charging stations for grade 3. We are looking now to invest in charging stations that would now push up to grades 4 and 5 as well. Not only would this limit the back and forth of these devices and some of the exposure to technology from our youngest learners, but it would also ensure that our equipment's refreshed regularly and not need to be replaced so quickly. And then we're upgrading our student information system, looking to switch over from Infinite Campus to Power School. This is something that our IT department has looked directly into extensively. The investment would have cost this year, but over the next 5 years would save us approximately $79,000 a year. So the initial investment would also then bring back savings in the next 4 budgets. So we do have mandated services that we need to account for, increased tuition costs. Again, this is something that I think is going to be a hot topic during the legislative session. Many of myself and many of my colleagues are pushing to put a cap on what specialized programming and out-of-district placements can charge per year in increases. Right now, there is no regulation, so whatever they decide, they're going to increase their costs, get shifted onto districts such as ours. And these are driving essential expenses for compliance and student success. Transportation, again, right now we will be having an expiring bus contract student. We're trying to negotiate a 1-year extension. That does not seem to be cost effective moving forward. But we are anticipating, if we go out to bid, that we do have some exposure. We're putting a 5% escalation from this year to next. I don't think that's a realistic number since currently our contract is pre-COVID numbers. So I think a long-term contract is something that we want to enter into with the next bus company, whether it's First Student or someone else, to try to spread the increase to fuel and labor costs out over several years. So again, we do have some exposure in this budget. How much, we're not sure yet, but we will try to work those numbers out. And we do have some suggestions to the board that you'll see in a few moments to try to help offset some of the potential increase to transportation costs. And again, the 8% premium increase is what we've been told for health insurance. I think we should stay steady on that. We do not anticipate any reductions as we go forward. Again, as I explained a few moments ago, this seems like a pretty solid number as we go forward with the budget. We do have some efficiencies in maximizing resources. We do have some cost savings from optimizing equipment and maintenance contracts through our IT department. I want to give Marco Patty a lot of credit for the work he's done with his department in trying to efficiencies and cost savings. All total, I think our increase in technology with everything that we need to accomplish is minimal. I believe less than $100,000. We also have reduced paper use and improved copy or print management that we're getting a little bit over $50,000 worth of savings. We're going to streamline our grounds maintenance. We're going out to bid contract for our athletic fields. As well as we reduced our tree maintenance line item from last couple of years because of all the work that has been done through our maintenance department, trimming back, cutting, and getting our safety and security around our buildings well maintained. We can look in future budgets if that becomes a necessity. Again, we got to give trees some time to grow, so we don't need $150,000. We have seen already some projected savings with our synergistics contract and utilities. We're happy to report there. And our in-district special education program continues to be an offset with cost avoidance of over $16 million, as we've seen in the past, see again in a moment. So again, as I just mentioned, we saved a little over $50,000, roughly $500 in year one of our investment in our expanded fleet of multifunction devices across all our schools. The expansion will increase our multifunction devices from 85 to 108. We added 1 per every elementary school, 2 for every middle school, for every high school. The transition has significantly reduced the number of desktop printers in the district. We once had 1,169. We're down to approximately 170, and that number is continuing to drop as we work through other offices and other areas where we can remove those desktop printers and print to the multifunctional devices that are strategically located in every building. So this is improving both efficiency and productivity. This initiative aligns with our commitment to sustainable resource management by ensuring uninterrupted access to reliable printing solutions. So our goal is to reduce operational costs, enhance the efficiency and accessibility of district-wide. Again, our synergistics contract, our total program savings we're anticipating is probably down about 7.4% overall, which is almost slightly over $130,000. This aims to reduce energy consumption through targeted efficiency measures, including behavioral changes of our staff, equipment optimization, facility audit. So I think 7.4% in Q1 is pretty good. I think we're going to see an overall savings, possibly a little bit more as we go through the budget and get our first year's worth of data from synergistics, but it is proving to be a cost savings measure, this synergistics that we invested in. As you've all seen this slide before, it's hard to read, but overall, all our in-district cost comparisons with our out-of-district placements, our cost avoidance by making sure that our students stay in our schools, receiving services from high-quality staff here in Fairfield, also being around their peers. Can't really put a dollar amount to that, but overall, we do see a savings of over $16 million if we had to send these children elsewhere. But as I've stressed in the past, not only to this board, but to the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, this cost avoidance number is low compared to the educational and social emotional benefits to our children for being able to stay in their neighborhood school or a school nearby, their districted school with their kids here in Fairfield. And we know if given the opportunity, we do a much better job than some of these out-of-district placements where we have no control over the hiring of staff, training of staff, or the delivery of instruction and support services. As I mentioned, we have two major projects to help maintain a safe environment in our schools. Our fire alarm system aging over at the middle school and needs to be replaced. It is proprietary, and we're trying to make sure that we're able to work with a vendor that is able to provide the upgrade to the system. And that's estimated at a cost of a little over $425,000. And we do have an outdated elevator at Fairfield Ludlow High School that we need to ensure reliability and accessibility for our students and our staff. Reduce downtime and maintenance costs as well, because we're constantly trying to fix this unit, and it's just costing more money. So there's a cost of $389,000-ish there. And we want to make sure that we can get that fixed for next school year. Stop putting money into that and get that up and running. By strategically leveraging cost-saving measures, we create room for impactful investments in our schools, whether it be exceptional teachers, modernized facilities, or enriched programs. These directly translate to outcomes that define Fairfield Public Schools. High academic achievement, thriving arts and sports programs, and students are well prepared for their futures. So again, we've talked about this in the past. What are the why? Why do we do this? Well, we do this to make sure that we provide a well-rounded experience for all our students here in Fairfield. Our robust athletic programs service over 2,500 student athletes every year. And we can go down. Championships, the division championships, and all those things, and how many students take advantage of going on to participate in intercollegiate athletics. But we just know the social emotional benefits, the opportunities that these student athletes get here in Fairfield is unparalleled to other districts. Our arts community, we have a thriving arts community here in Fairfield. We've gone over the number of accolades and accomplishments that our arts department has received and the community outreach they do through our arts program. Also, the number of opportunities at Sacred Heart University through accredited advanced photography courses, and the such. I mean, we can go on and on and on. I could speak to this as well as our music programs and all the opportunities and the number of students. If you went over the holiday season to see both performances at both our high schools, you just see just the number of students that are impacted every single year by participating in our music programs. And I think this is what separates Fairfield from our other neighboring towns, is the number of opportunities that every child has to participate. I was having a conversation with someone today. If your child is sitting around at home doing nothing, it's almost, that's on you, because there are exponentially, I can't count the number of opportunities that our kids have to participate in something here in Fairfield. And I think we need to continue to stress that as we go through this budget. I know the number seems like it's alarming to some, and it will be, but the benefits that we get from investing in our public education system here in Fairfield, I think is unparalleled. Not because I work here, but because I've seen the effects of not investing in public education to the level it needs to be, and what that does to children, because that directly impacts children. And then all the achievement and honors that our students have earned, whether it's the 288 students that earned the seal of biliteracy, advancing their language acquisition skills. Our district proudly celebrates this year 5 schools of distinction: Holland Hill, Osborne Hill, Roger Sherman, Stratfield, and Dwight. We also commend our national merit semifinalists and finalists, as well as our AP scholars, with 82% of our AP students scoring a 3 or higher on the AP exam. These are just a touch of the achievements that contribute to our district's A grade rating on niche. And it reflects our commitment to academic excellence and student preparedness for future endeavors. Some of our just brief accomplishments: 91% of our students participate in post-secondary education. We provide students with early college experiences. Now we've expanded not only through the University of Connecticut, Sacred Heart University, Norwalk Community College, University of Bridgeport, and Quinnipiac University. Our 2024 graduates were accepted to 220 colleges and universities. Our high school students engage in a variety of art, drama, and music programs. And Ward and Ludlow students participate, as we said, in a number of varsity and sub-varsity athletic teams. This is all part of educating the entire student, and that is the goal of the Fairfield Homes. Now, we do have some assumed risks, as I mentioned, in this budget. We prepared for an anticipated 5% increase based on pre-COVID rates, accounting for approximately $400,000 additional in our budget. Some of the potential actual increases, if current trends suggest that transportation costs may rise by 10 to 25%. What would a 10% increase be? That would be another additional $389,000. If it was 15%, it would be an additional $778,000. If it was 20%, it would be about $1.2 million. So we are going to be looking at this more closely. I did have an initial conversation today, I must mention, with First Student, in trying to do a 1-year extension to our current contract to buy us a little bit more time to go out to bid. That did not go well, and we're going to have to look at potentially either going out to the bidding process or working with the town. We do have some conversations that we're having. Look at a renegotiation possibly with First Student for a long-term contract and what that could look like potentially. That would benefit us, but also what are the terms of that contract could stand as. So just want to bring that to the table, because this is something that could potentially expose us to an increase, further increase to the ask that we have. Now, we can mitigate some of that. One of the mitigation strategies that the board can take on, and I think that it's something that we've mentioned and we should talk a little bit more about, and we should have a better understanding of what that could look like in the next 3 to 4 days, but increasing the designated walking zones to reduce the number of students requiring bus transportation As we're all aware, we are currently well under the state maximum walking distances at all levels. So that is an option. We did hear a lot during the redistricting process about how much our families value walking to school. So this would help encourage more walkers into our walking zones. And again, securing a long-term contract with any transportation provider to lock in rate and annual cost is something that we're definitely going to have to look to. Any short-term contract, whether it be under 5 years, could expose us to much higher rates than possibly 5 years or longer. So those are some of the strategies that we've talked about. You know, there are options for parents to opt out of bus transportation if they're not utilizing transportation, but we know that's not something that's going to really come to fruition and give us any real savings there. Because obviously, if that was the case, we would have seen that already. Thank you. We appreciate the board's attention to this budget and the priorities, and look forward to the upcoming conversations. I know we have several meetings scheduled. You're all going to have 1 or 2 questions regarding the upcoming budget, and we're happy to answer those questions. But again, we are here and dedicated to ensuring a financial health and success and the continuation and expansion of all our current programs. You will see, obviously, that one of the things mentioned in our enhancements to our programs, there is money in the budget for the world language textbooks that we've talked about at previous meetings, and there is an increase of slightly over $300,000, which includes 1 FTE and transportation costs to our new gifted curriculum that's being proposed later on this evening. So, thank you. Now I have to start looking through, especially change.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll remind board members that at this point, we normally don't dissect things, but it's if you have any comments, broad comments, things that you might want administration to look further into, now is kind of the time to, start with Mr. Asen.
Could you just remind us of the timeframe and the flow, and are we going to follow the same as past with breaking it down by categories, and we'll get all that ahead of time? With
That is exactly the plan.
We are making a slight shift in how the categories are broken down and the questions. We've taken into consideration some feedback from Ms. Maxon Kennelly and how that's structured. And we want to talked a little bit about that in the finance committee, just to make more sense to how the questions will be, but yes, by categories.
But what he's talking about is taking those 12 buckets of broad topics. In the past, we've had, personnel issues will appear in the personnel section and, the intro to that section and in the back and the supplementary materials, and trying to take all of those into one chunk and saying, we're going to talk about personnel. And here are the references within the book. But otherwise, in terms of the breakdown for week 1 and week 2, we're doing just as previous.
Correct.
Previous years.
Yes. And when will we get that? And also further questions.
So you'll get the budget book tonight.
The
Google Doc.
The buckets in the Google Doc.
We can have that up and running tomorrow. And then we will put timeframes and closures. We'll make sure we incorporate weekends for those who spend some time on the weekends, obviously for those that maybe have less time during the week to enter their questions. So we'll try to be very flexible in the timeframes where the Google Doc is open and closed. And then we'll respond to those in a time.
Follow up.
Ms. Jacobson.
And the responses. So if we're going to leave the questions open for the weekend, in order for us to be able to read the questions before the meeting on Tuesday, we'd have to get them by like Monday night.
Correct.
Okay.
We will work.
Not a lot of time for staff to answer.
We will work, I mean, I don't anticipate many questions.
As always, I think I would encourage board members to
Get the minutes.
Yeah,
early and often. Yeah.
and as they come in, we'll be looking at them. Yeah, so we're not gonna wait till Monday to answer all the questions, so.
Mr. Lee.
Just to clarify something, I know you're asking for a 6.45% increase. However, the actual increase, because you can't touch the 4.7 for the contractual and things like that, you're looking for a less than 2% increase for this coming fiscal year to operate.
On top of.
Well,
On top of.
well, some of the other, like the transportation, we're not going to be able to do anything about that. And again, we have some exposure there. And also the mandated services that we need to provide, in with special education and some escalating costs there. Again, very limited, so it's probably 1%, if that, where we have some flexibility. I mean, if even that.
Ms. Mexico?
Through the chair, Mr. Lee, I would argue that that's not quite the case. So say, for example, a teacher retires and it's in an area where it's not a pressing need to replace. That's part of that 4.7%. You've just brought that down. So that's a 4.7% as is for current staffing, as with all the other things. So in fact, there's nothing in there that's definite. It's just those are things that don't represent enhancements. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
And so my two questions, I don't know at what point the Google Sheet or Google Doc gets open, but can we at least get the agenda so we know okay, who am I kidding? I'm not looking till this weekend, but at least we'll know which areas are prioritized first. And then the second question, since you've already alluded to it, and I'd already written it down as a question, if the topic of transportation and the possibility of considering changing those walking zones we have mentioned it before, I'll just throw out there straight off is that as soon as possible, if we could see what staff has produced in terms of this could equate to these kinds of savings, that would be helpful since it's already part of the presentation.
We've been pressing today to get what that would look like, excluding obviously Bird, Dwight, and Mill Hill. We do want to take a look at Mill Hill at some point, probably not anytime in the near future, but the ridership there is not 100%. And I think as more accessibility to walking to the building is there, drop-offs and the such, I think, but right now we're not looking at those three schools. But we got some approximate numbers of students excluding those three schools. So for example, if we increased elementary from 0.75 to a mile, that would reduce the ridership of 700 students in the district. If we went in middle from 1 to 1.5, that would be 460 students roughly. That would be reduced from ridership, and high school increases would go to the state maximum. So that would be 1.25 to 2 miles. That would reduce us approximately 900 students in ridership. But we will know what that will equate to actual buses by the end of this week for sure, for certain. We've been pressing, and today there's a lot of pressing that got done today, and they understand the urgency for this.
And just as a add-on to that, I would request that when we get that information, I'm not asking for the dollars to be crunched for every 1/10 of a mile that we add, but at least if we could see the ridership impact for the current, the extreme, the state, what the state requires, and then maybe a few points in between, just so that we.
Yeah.
I think somebody would end up asking it anyway.
Well, I think really that would be probably more for middle and high.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there's no in between for the 1/4 mile for elementary. So I guess we could adjust for a 1/4 mile or so in the other two directions, in middle and.
And again, I'm not saying to crunch them because I can't imagine what's involved in crunching those numbers, but if we at least do the ridership, we would know where there was maybe more dramatic increases or whatever.
Sure.
Then I had one other question.
There's just a major concern with transportation overall. I mean, every district that has gone out to bid, that has had a contract that was pre-COVID, are seeing numbers that are unheard of. And unless it's spread out over a longer term contract, it's not doable.
And just in case, on the off chance anybody is tuning in who hasn't done this for years, could you explain the exemptions for Burge White and Mill Hill? Because that reference might be something not everybody understands.
Well, just out of safety, there are no real walking sidewalks or accessibility to those buildings. So we do provide 100% busing. However, as we know, and I've gotten emails recently about the amount of cars in the drop-off lanes at all three of those schools. So I just don't know how much ridership, and especially at the high schools, we know we're running a lot of buses that just don't have a lot of but again, if no one opts out, we don't know, we can't reduce anything.
Thank you.
Mr. Asa?
Yeah, and I just wanted to reiterate to your point about having staff crunch these numbers, and I just want Mr. Testani to clarify, it's not necessarily our staff.
No.
So.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, so
Okay.
when he's saying pressing, the people in transportation are not the ones doing this work. It's the, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the
Transserve.
Transserve, so that's being, you
Yeah,
know.
we're paying a slight fee for that. They have all the data and they have software that produces the routes.
Yeah, and I think this will be particularly important as we look for this, because you hear more and more districts around our area facing new bus contracts where the first year is 20%. Subsequently after that, it goes back to a normal. But there's a lot of things that go into that, and costs have risen exponentially. So it's not like they're trying to get you. They have to be in business too. So it's something that I think we'd be wise to have these discussions over the next couple of weeks and plan accordingly, because I think the idea of savings in transportation like we've had in the last couple of years are gone.
Well, having the conversation today, a lot what's driving this is the increase to the hourly rate that bus drivers are demanding. They're unionized. They are Teamsters. I think the unions have clearly understood that they do have leverage. There is a bus driver shortage everywhere across the country, as well as retirement, 401ks that have now are part of their package as well, that probably never existed many years ago. So,
and can I just,
and the fuel costs.
can I make a point to that with regards to unions? I don't think that everybody understands that unions are not the same. So like for Westport or other towns, there are different unions. So Fairfield has a union. So it's been broadly talked about at this table that our drivers are paid less. Well, they have, I believe, another year left in their contract. So a year from now, they are going to be negotiating to get up, to where now, if we were to switch providers, the union doesn't change. So regardless with who we go with, they're still going to be paying whatever the negotiated collective bargaining agreement rate is. So.
Correct. And right now, since there's 3 steps to their contract, we're trying to bring in drivers to address our needs here in Fairfield at a higher rate. But of course, then if you're going to pay them higher, those at the higher step want some sort of negotiation to increase their salaries because they've put in their time. So there's a lot of factors that go into this that will all be passed along to us as the service lead.
Just had a follow-up question about, well, as we expand these radius, as you mentioned, 3 elementary schools, but will the team that's looking at this look at criteria, like the safety criteria, for example, Fairfield Woods Middle School, as you expand the radius, it just expands beyond Black Rock Turnpike, which is not walkable anyway. So like, are those factors going to be?
Yeah, we don't want kids having to cross those types of main roads. No, those are always
So
factored.
they will.
Yeah. So, and we'll make those little tweaks as we go along. We're just trying to get a general number of where it could land. And then we can make adjustments from there, just at least to give the board an idea that if we make these, that you could potentially see this type of savings. I wouldn't bank on every dollar, but at least we get an understanding. But we don't want kids crossing main roads to walk to school. Even if there's a crossing guard there, we wouldn't want that.
I would say that I crossed Black Rock Turnpike going to Woods in the early 80s, and I rather would have not. Ms. Jacobson.
Just to follow up, there are hazardous conditions, regulations, state and within our own policies and regs that address some of those very, very kind of specific manner of what we have to account for in that regard. So that is a part of the thinking. But through you to the superintendent on the 5%, knowing how high these other contracts are coming in, and I don't know at what point the 5% was decided to put in here. Obviously, probably before your recent conversation. But just trying to understand why we put in such a small number relative to where we know they're landing.
Well, I think we were hopeful that we would be able to negotiate a 1-year extension with the current provider without them blowing it, figuring that they want to get the long-term contract. So being a provider here in Fairfield, I believe for 20 years. But again, I think they also understand that given the time crunch and everything else, they do have some leverage. We could have probably tried to start this process sooner, but then you run the risk that if the current provider doesn't get awarded the contract, you're now going to be at the mercy of someone who knows they're out in a few months, and what kind of service will they provide us in the interim as well. So,
and just for the timing of, you said we'll know more as we go along. What is that before we vote? Like,
yes.
will we know if we're bidding or
yes.
Okay, so before we vote, we'll know how to adjust this.
Yes.
Okay, that was what I wanted to follow up.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we've already reached out and spoke to purchasing in the town side of what we can or can't do under town purchasing regulations. And we also reached back out to First Student to see what could this look like under different scenarios.
To get a vibe if it was going to be board adjustment or if we were going to be looking like other things that we've had to do, like insurance with other boards to kind of carry that. So
I would prefer that we do it here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kresna.
The chair to Mr. Testani. Two quick things. One, in terms of what Ms. Max Canelli said, in terms of doing a few different, for me, I'd rather see how many routes it affects versus the people itself. Because for me,
Whatever, I just meant variety.
people.
Oh, yeah. No, it's really about routes, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the
routes. That's where the savings comes from.
And second, and it's also for the public, are there any of these bus companies now that are offering electronic vehicles? Gas savings is there or no?
There's a lot of incentives out there, including one with First Student that they have an incentive for 10 electric buses through a grant, but that's only contingent that they work with us. If they don't work with us, that opportunity for them goes away. So we are the pass-through for that.
So there are possible savings if we, maybe initial spending for long-term savings if we go electric.
I wouldn't necessarily count on that. I think just like everything else, I don't think the electric buses are for savings. It's more for sustainability.
Thank you.
Mr. Racer?
Yeah, to your point, there's actually state legislation that requires this happening. And that is one of the things that has been driving up contracts. So it's definitely not savings. It's the wish of people in Hartford, again, pushing things down on the local level and telling us what to do and costing us money.
I thought that's.
More broad items. All right, well, I guess we can move on. So tomorrow morning, we will get the breakdown of what topics will be coming at the.
Yeah.
And then we'll get that as soon as possible. And, but with this topic is gonna. Jacobson.
No, I got my color code. It's ready to go.
All right, thank you so much. Go on to item 6, consent calendar. We have 3 items in there. Approval of policy 3220/3230. State/federal funds, approval of our December 10th, 2024 special meeting minutes, and approval of our December 10th, 2024 regular meetings. I have a motion. Mr. Asa, seconded by Lee. Any comments or questions on the items in the consent calendar? Any comments from the public, the approval of policy? Seeing none, back to the board. The vote, all in favor? 9-0, thank you very much. Okay, item 7, old business. Item 7A, approval of grades 3 through 3 gifted curriculum. With the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve grades 3 through 8 gifted curriculum. I have a motion. Ms. Jacobson, seconded by Mr. Krasnov, sorry. Mr. Tessani, do you have any commentary on this or?
No, again, as mentioned in the budget, I think people wanted to know what the cost of the changes to the new curriculum would bring. Quite obvious, the majority of that is transportation costs and getting all the students from the elementary schools on whatever schedule. That's something we'll to a central location to be able to work collaboratively. And then the 1 FTE that we've figured more on the higher side of the salary schedule just to be safe, and the health benefits that go along with it. So other than that, you know, you have what was presented at the previous meeting for approval. And we're bringing that forward tonight.
Mr. Racer.
Mr. Testani, could you just clarify, did you say it was just under 400,000?
We're figuring a little over 300,000. I mean, plus or minus, because again, the transportation is based on what a bus run is now to and from. So that could go up slightly. And then for the FTE, depending, we've budgeted about $117,000, 90,000 for the or so for the salary, and then the rest for the benefits.
So we could be looking at north of 350 for this, if
give or take, yeah.
And if we were to approve it, it would carry in this budget.
Yes, it's budgeted for in the budget.
And if this were, okay.
Ask a follow-up.
Is
Is that the delta between what we've already got in our current budget?
Yes.
So because we're already funding this.
Correct.
Right,
Yes.
so it's in addition to
It's additional cost
what it is now.
to what it is now with the 3 staff members that we currently have dedicated.
In grades 3 through 8.
Grades 3 through 8.
Thanks.
Mr. Lee.
So a follow-up on that, what would be the total cost then moving into next year?
I mean,
Without the knowing
I
of.
would assume the 3 teachers are currently at top step, plus benefits, so we'll say 3, 4, 20, about 800,000 all in. We'll say for the new costs and the existing costs.
Without the knowledge of what that final piece of transportation is.
Yeah, I think that would, you know, be minimal. Bring a little bit more to the buses, but if we're running right now on the buses, say 200, say 230. 10% on that, even 20% max, we're gonna get as needed.
Mr. Racer.
Hypothetically, what would happen if this were either not approved or simply delayed until after we go through bucks? What is the timeline here? Would it still be able to be implemented if it were approved at a later date after we got through the budget? To know if we can.
There would be no change to the service we provide this year. This would begin in August.
So then it would, if we didn't do that, the assumption would be that it would continue as is
This year.
And then
Next year it would get approved at all. Next year it would continue as
is.
Correct.
Ms. Metz.
Just to clarify, so in other words, if this were delayed, so that we got through the budget to see what we are and are not affording, we wouldn't be holding up any PD or curriculum creation work or implementation guides that would have been happening in the summer regardless. So we wouldn't be holding something up.
Now, that would happen after the budget process anyway, so. The budget still needs to get approved all the way through.
Would that be the same for the next item as well then?
Yeah,
Mrs. Kersey?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I enthusiastically support this program. Really excited for our gifted students to have this opportunity. And in the same way that I wouldn't want to delay services for other students, I would hope that we'd be able to do this with, and implement it with expediency.
Mr. Krasnoff?
I agree with Ms. Kearns' sentiment. My other concern is, I believe in the proposal, it would be starting at the beginning of third grade versus midway. So I would assume that would delay if we waited, no.
no, I mean, we're still gonna identify the students, and we're just gonna continue to move forward with, but
Would it change that? Would it go back to midway then instead?
yes.
So wait, so we would not do identification?
I mean, we could still identify the kids earlier. I don't know what, I mean, we'd have to really look at then what that would look like in terms of, which it would be more kids sooner, right?
And my one other comment is,
It would be the same amount of kids sooner, so we'd have to look at schedules, but I don't see it being a problem.
I just want to remind everyone at the table, this is in that special ed bucket. So, you know, I feel like we fund other special ed programs. I would hate to see a program like this not get funded when it is special ed.
Mr. Lee?
But we're not delaying or holding back anything, correct? If we don't approve or delayed, the program continues. The only thing we need to find out is the hiring a full-time instructor and possibly the final numbers on transportation. We're not delaying anything else. The kids are still gonna have that program. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, we're not gonna hire now.
An hour or so instead of a full day
This year, but for
next year too.
Mr. Asa?
Yeah, just to the point I think Mr. Krasnoff's making, and to my point, I'm not talking about eliminating it completely right now. I'm just talking about the idea that is coming to my head of delaying this vote, not with an intention or signaling across the bow that I'm saying I'm voting against this period. I'm just wondering if it makes more sense coming into this budget discussions. And I don't think, as Mr. Testani said, if it ultimately does get approved and gets in the budget, I don't think it would delay what you're worried about with the identification, because that's next school year anyways.
Mr. Lee?
Well, if that's the case, although there's no delays per se, I want to make a motion to, can I do that? I can do it. Yeah.
Amending the motion?
I want to make a motion to definitely suspend the vote. Postpone the vote. I'm not.
We can postpone indefinitely.
Postpone indefinitely the vote, sorry.
All right,
Can you just repeat one more time what the motion?
To postpone,
Definitely.
definitely vote.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Asa? Any discussion?
Yeah.
Ms.
Back to Mr. Ace's point, he was interested in this and through the budget discussion, which would be to the end of January. So yours is not in alignment with Mr. Ace's comment. It's separate and distinct that it's indefinitely, meaning forever.
No,
That's not what that means.
It definitely means you can bring it back at another time without saying.
You're not doing a point certain, so.
Right.
So to clarify for the public, you're not meaning forever,
No,
you're.
not forever. It'll come back at the discretion of the chairman.
And on a procedural basis is different than tabling, which we could do with a majority vote, but then we need to vote as a majority to bring it back. It's clunkier.
No, I know. I'll lay it on the table and leave it there.
That motion's on the table.
That motion's on the table.
Second.
Are there any more comments on that? All right, since this is our agenda, I don't know, it's a public comment issue. We could just go to a vote. All in favor? Mr. Lee, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Maxon-Cannelli, Mr. Asa, and Mrs. Rinaldi, and all opposing? Mr. Krasnow, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, and Ms. Gertzi. Motion passes. This gets postponed indefinitely. We can bring it back at some other future point. So we can move on to item 7B, approval of grade 5, K5 library media curriculum. With the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve grades K-5 library media curriculum. Can I have one of it? Ms. Rinaldi, seconded by Mr. Asa. Is there any further comment on this or?
No, I think it was brought to, and we split it in half, 6, 12 and the K-5. So today we brought it back. It's my understanding that really didn't have any issues with the K-5 library media curriculum. We've had a couple of issues raised in public comment, but other than that, I'm not sure anything else that needs to be discussed or any questions that need to be answered.
Ms. Jacobson.
Mr. Peterson, I was just curious why this was brought back. I remember the last time we had this conversation, we had talked as a board of needing to have a overall broader conversation, overdue conversation, just in on technology in general, setting standards and things like that. So I was a little surprised this came back so quickly before we had that conversation. So just in that context, can you give me some insight as to when that conversation is going to be happening?
Well, I think that conversation certainly needs to begin. I think that, but that's as we've talked about, kind of a much more overarching concept than a specific.
It would be applicable here. So
It would be applicable, but I don't know that we necessarily want to. Well, I would suggest, and this would be up to the policy committee, that the discussion probably start there. I'm talking about technology policy.
I just know that you said we were going to have a conversation and I didn't know when that was going to be scheduled.
Yeah, I asked to put it back on the agenda because we opened up the Google Doc for any commentary and it was not one.
I already gave my feedback long ago, so.
And so it didn't sound to me like there was any further discussion.
Okay, so sorry, just back to this conversation. So you're gonna send it to policy first versus a board conversation then?
It strikes me as that's the natural place for the conversation to begin. I think we do poorly when we try to craft text at the table.
Doesn't talk about that. Thank you.
Ms. Mexico?
I was actually going to raise exactly the point Ms. Jacobson did slightly differently, is that I actually will be not looking to stop the conversation immediately, but I am looking to postpone this, and I did email Mr. Testani to let him know that I would be saying so, is that we don't have room on our January agenda, but the plan, staff actually asked if it could get started in January, and we had too many things to get through and only an hour and 40 minutes in which to do it, which is short for policy. So that the plan is that we are going to start talking about this in February. And it's not that I don't think it, I absolutely think that tech education, I don't want it to be carved out any place separate from the library media. Because I'm not looking, the elementary school in general ed classroom time cannot carve out anything else. I mean, it's just so tight there. So I think it's in the place that it belongs. I am not convinced personally that I've heard the comments of the public, and I will say, I want to say the name of this right. But the ed tech report that we did receive back in December was incredibly compelling in terms of what it spoke to. And I just think that before we approve this curriculum, we need to be looking at this in the big picture of just what tech time do we want, where I'm not necessarily, if we're pulling it out of or asking for it to be pulled out of this curriculum, it'll undoubtedly be because it's also someplace else, or maybe we want it off the table completely for a certain grade. But policy is about to have that conversation. And I just feel like it would be premature to go ahead with this, because then this would be tying our hands, because this would be where a significant component of tech could be taking place. And I don't want us to have that conversation getting started in policy with our hands already tied. So I'm saying the comment first. I'm not making the motion yet, just because I'm not looking to change the conversation until people have had their say.
Mrs. Gurley?
Thank you. I have a lot of conflict about this curriculum because I think it's so important, given the concerns that we have from the public, that we are educating our digital citizens, because as it stands, we use technology in a lot of our implementation. So this does exist. So in some ways, I think in this point in time, this protects that. I don't think that this is a great idea moving forward necessarily because we haven't had this conversation at the table, which we've wanted to do sometimes. So that would be a huge priority for me. In addition to having a policy, getting the feedback from the board like we've done before. And I don't know the order that happens in, but it may need to even happen concurrently, right? I don't know. The other thing that concerns me about not moving forward with this is the author visits. That is an exceptional opportunity for our community, and that funding, I am assuming, is in this budget as part of this, assuming that this would be passed. I don't know. I mean, is that included in this budget?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's included in the budget, but I don't think that would prevent us from moving forward. I mean,
So components of it would move forward, including.
well, we'd still have to have if we don't pass the curriculum, we still have to have library media next year in K-5. So the K-5 library media specialists are still going to move forward with what they currently do. I think they did a lot of work here to try to do this responsibly. I mean, they go 40 minutes as it was mentioned here in the graph, once every 6 days. I mean, it is a small part of the elementary schedule when you look at it, less than 2% of the time that they spend in library. And I think they don't use technology in the entire time. So even if they used it half of the time, which I think probably would stretch it out, even be a stretch. I mean, over the course of 10 months, it's not a lot of tech time in this particular curriculum.
So, and just to respond to that, I think that, you know, the respect that I would give to those educators because they know what our students need and the exposure they have even at the earlier grades.
Sure.
Having created this document without board input, right? We haven't given it to them. I can understand why it came to us in this form, and I think they did a fantastic job given the circumstances. Also understanding the comments from the public and the need to have this conversation first.
Well, and I think these are not rookies. We're talking about veteran library media specialists that do this day in and day out. They work with grade levels from kindergarten through 5th grade. I have the utmost respect for what they do, and I think that they have put forward a great document that I think we should respect and we should approve tonight. But if it doesn't get approved, then it'll be on hold. But I don't see how we are going to govern through policy curriculum. I mean, that's a slippery slope that we're going down in that respect. But
I have one quick follow-up to Mrs. Guernsey comment. Just following in terms of where we start, that I should have added this earlier, that my vision would be just like with class size, we would wrestle with it in policy first. It's too broad. And then finally, because if there's immediate agreement on certain things, those might be issues we wouldn't bring back to the full board. But where we feel like this is too big, this is not for 3 out of 9 people to determine for the board, we would have that way it'd be a more focused conversation. But I do agree that it needs to start in policy and then we figure out what needs to come back to some.
I would just say my vision is for the larger questions to be answered by the 9 of us in conversation, but we can't, getting started is always the challenge.
And I should also say is that it is starting with staff. So it's all gonna be begun with the language that they bring before us, and that will be the springboard for the conversation. So we'll get their input and then see where that takes us.
Mr. Krasnoff.
So I am in support of this. I do understand what the public said. I don't necessarily disagree with them. I've been really wrestling with this, but we don't have like a computer science class per se. This is the home where I believe it does belong. We do need some kind of tech time. The world does run with technology. I do have issues with in the classroom technology and becoming a babysitter for some of our students. So I would be in support of some kind of policy that gives some kind of boundaries. But in terms of the library media, for me, this is, I think, where it belongs. So I am okay with it.
Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you. I just want to follow up with Ms. Maxon Kennelly's point, which I take very well. At our last meeting, you did highlight that this was coming to policy. So part of what I wouldn't even call it, I think we gave feedback at our meeting. We heard from the public, and I was anticipating this going through policy. So I don't see it as delaying the work of our educators. I see it as incorporating the very fast-moving science on this topic. And I've been really impacted by a lot of that, by the ed tech
thing, by Anxious Generation, by many things we've been given. And this curriculum is a 10-year document. And I'm really hesitant to move forward without taking into account all of that. And I would like to hear from policy. I'd like to hear from the full board. And I think that while I respect the curriculum work immensely, I also think that we as a board have to take some accountability for the philosophy behind our technology use. And without doing that first, I think it's really hard to put support behind this curriculum with the amount of tech time, in particular for our youngest learners. And that's just where I stand today. Similar to the gifted curriculum, I don't see a pause in delaying implementation for next fall. I see it as being responsible in taking the feedback we've been given, not only from other board members that many of us expressed here at the table in December, but also our public that has been immensely engaged in this topic, not only in email and public comment, but in creating committee work around it, hosting events that I attended, as well as our superintendent and many parents. And we hear anecdotally the effect of, I think we're a little behind the times in terms of policy right now. We have neighboring districts that have very succinct policies in terms of time usage for their older students. We are not there yet. So I'm very, very hesitant to move forward with this curriculum. So I really hope that policy committee takes it up and brings it back to us similar that we saw in class size. I thank you for that work.
Mr. Lee.
I want to piggyback on what Mrs. Flynn said about the 10-year kind of study. Our kids, and I definitely hear what the public's saying, we all experience it on a daily basis, but the reality is the kids today, it's technology. When you have kids in college, especially the ones on the boards that currently have kids in college, it's nothing but technology. You can't go into your room without your cell phone. You can't get anything with your cell phone. I think this is a good start. At least they can teach these kids what's right, what's wrong, that our kids at that time didn't know, right? There's no other place that's safer than in the library for that couple hours a week or a month that you have someone professionally tell them this is wrong, this is what you have to do, this is where you need to break. If you don't educate them sometime along the line correctly, they're going to learn the bad habits that we hear. And, I understand, I'm with Mr. Krasnov. I don't want to see it more in the classroom. That's the right time to do it. Let them educate them. The curriculum is right on board with that. And, 10 years from now, we're going to see these kids are going to be developed for this situation. And if society changes where it goes back, then we'll be able to go back. But it doesn't, because the minute you blink, AI is changing, everything else is changing. We got to keep these kids moving forward.
Mr. Asa.
Yeah, I think to Mrs. Flynn's point, I think it's important to know that, while we're on a 10-year cycle, it is not unheard of for departments to come back, mid-cycle or have, reviews or ask for changes. And I don't see, while it's not mandated, I see this and technology as something coming up over the next 10 years. So if we were to approve this while it's a 10-year plan, there could be a board well past when several of us are not going to be on it anymore, that could easily bring it back up and try to discuss and go with it. So I take your points to heart. I think you make some good ones, but I'm not as stuck on the 10-year thing, knowing that it can change.
Ms. Jacobson.
Just listening to some of the comments today, I think reiterates the point. This conversation has stopped being about library and books, and it's all about technology right now. I think that's the point we're trying to make. And that there were some serious concern, not only with our constituents and our parent group, but the world in general. And remembering that this is K-5. We're not talking about third, fourth, fifth. It starts in kindergarten. And that there were a lot of concerns, especially in that K2 realm. So I hear your points. I'm just not sure we're necessarily agreeing on when that should be. And I hear loud and clear from the parents, but also the research and science and all about that. So I think that there's no harm in not doing this right now, as we have the important conversation that we all knew has been well overdue in this area, grasp our arms around the philosophy of this. I would hate to see us pass it and then come to a philosophy position statement where we have to pull it back. We've done that in the past as well. And that's what I would be looking to do. So I was going to either not support this, but if there is a proposal, I'm happy to entertain that conversation as well. I do think we need to get our arms around our philosophy in this area prior to passage of this. And remembering that it's library does not mean technology in my mind. Thank you.
If I could just make a logistical point. If we reject this, we can't reconsider it in its current form. It would be much more complicated to reconsider it in its current form. Let me put it that way. I think that if the feeling of the table is that we need time, I would entertain a motion to postpone. But Ms. Mexico.
So I just want to make a couple comments and I'm going to make the motion. We'll see where it goes. Again, through the chair to Mr. Lee, I completely agree with Mrs. Jacobson's point is that I absolutely agree. We can't be crazy about this. We know grades at least 4 and 5 for sure, 3, 4, and 5 for sure, that they're becoming digital citizens and we need to start educating them early. I couldn't agree with you more about being proactive, about being positive, thoughtful, ethical digital citizens. But I'm going to throw out the very simple hypothetical. What if we ended up with a policy of 0 tech allowed in kindergarten? Right out of the gate, forget about 10 years, we immediately have a policy that is in conflict with curriculum. I am not saying that's where we're going to end up. I don't know. I don't know what staff will be recommending, but that is my reason of let's see it in its totality, because if we started saying, oh, well, this tech would be fine in 1st grade and 2nd grade, well, except that what if when we really dig into it, tech is also part of a little bit in math and ELA and social studies and science and health and wellness and STEM, suddenly those hours on a screen are adding up. And we can't, and I think it's a mistake to view this in a silo without our having that conversation. So at that point, I would like to make a motion to postpone indefinitely the vote on the, library media curriculum K through 5.
Second, Jacobson. Comments on the motion to postpone? Mrs. Guernsey.
I was just going to say, at our previous meeting, when we approved, when this board approved the textbook purchase, which was actually a technology purchase, I brought up this issue and yet that vote passed. So it's like we're having the same discussion again and we'll see how it goes. But just drawing that comparison, which
Mr. Kressler?
same situation.
I have concerns postponing. Not to get personal, but I have a 2-year-old who already knows how to use an iPad. And I would prefer him to come to school and learn responsible technology use, whether it's in kindergarten, 1st grade. To me, the sooner he can learn it, the better. There's only so much I can do as a parent. I think it needs to be reinforced from school. So personally, I feel the sooner we can get this in place, the better, but that's my question.
Mexico.
But as a reminder, this will have no impact on the spring. And I have no interest in postponing this past where whatever we end up with can either be modified or implemented for next year. So I don't see this having any of that kind of impact. But I also would remind that I found it really valuable when a member of the public mentions, my child's still learning how to use a pencil. So rather than mouse maneuvering, let's focus on some of those other, again, that's just me being personal. I don't know where we're going to end up, but I still want to have the total technology use conversation so that parents are very clear on what we're doing in this district. And if we continue approving something piecemeal, we hurt that conversation, which we will be having starting in February.
I have a problem creating a policy that dictates our curriculum. I'd rather pass our curriculum and then create a policy that doesn't encompass our curriculum. That's just my point of view. I think we go down a slippery slope, start dictating what curriculum is by policy. And I can name a million ways that this could get really cloudy on what we teach, what we don't teach, what books are in. There's a lot going on, banning certain books. Like, to me, there's a very slippery slope starting to write policy to dictate curriculum.
But understand we already do that.
And to Ms. Max and Kennelly's point, I think it's really, I don't want to be short-sighted when this delay would not delay this from moving forward in the fall. But I think we would be remiss to not look at, if we look at this in a silo, we don't look at our exploding OT numbers.
And when we hear things like our youngest learners are going in and spending less time with pencils and paper, I have concerns. And while it does just apply for this curriculum, I think what we heard at our last meeting was that this board had an appetite to talk about our philosophy in regards to technology. And I think we need time to do that. And I think if we pass this, to Ms. Jacobson's point, we're pulling it back from staff. And I think it is our responsibility at this point to stop, have the conversation, have it in public, engage our public in totality and have this conversation. I think we've waited far too long as it is.
Ms. Jacobson?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to Mr. That's not what this would be. You're not writing a policy dictating curriculum. We have lots of policy already on curriculum and what are standards around other things in policy. So this is a philosophy conversation and standards that we already do. So I'm just looking to understand what your comment, because that's not what that's.
Well, in response, I want to have the philosophy conversation. I think that's really, really important, whether it's cell phone, computer use in classroom, all that to me is extremely important. But I just don't see how that affects this particular curriculum. That's my concern. I don't want to take away from.
It's around technology use.
But it's responsible technology use, which to me is slightly different than technology use.
All right, just wanted to clarify, we already do what you're saying.
Mr. Testani wants to.
Yeah, I just want to add something because I think it's a great conversation everyone's having here. There's a couple of points I do want to highlight. Number one, because there's a lot of light being shed on K-5 library media curriculum. Not having any technology in this curriculum whatsoever, I think is not going to solve a problem. If there's a child that has a hard time with a pencil, we can't blame the library media specialists and the 20 hours a week that the child is getting in library media. So I just don't want this all to fall a year. And we're halfway through the year. So they probably had about 3 hours of technology, if that, in certain grades in that class.
Follow up on that?
Okay, and then I think we should get to.
How about for the whole day? You know what it is for the whole day?
The amount of technology used, I think that would probably vary by classroom.
Okay, exactly. That's the point.
Oh, no, I agree with you.
Right,
I
exactly.
think if it's up to me, we should just stop buying Chromebooks for elementary school students. Save us a ton of money. Let's not buy them for sixth graders either.
Okay, so just for the point, it's not about.
You're getting a little far.
I mean, we can go all out here if you want to do it.
The motion before this
I'm
board
happy to do it.
is to postpone consideration of this item indefinitely. Are we ready to vote on that? Are all in favor of postponing indefinitely? Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, all opposed to postponing indefinitely. Mr. Castro, Mr. Lee, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Asa, and Mrs. Rell. That motion fails. This motion is currently before us. I feel like we've talked a lot, but so Mrs. Maxon Kelly.
So then I will be voting against this curriculum, which I think is, I'm stretching back 13 years. I don't agree with the tech component in kindergarten. I was using that as a hypothetical before. Now I will be explicit about it. I don't think a kindergartner needs to be learning about digital citizenship. And kindergartners who are already coming in versed, then their parents have already been talking about that to a limited degree. But I agree with every public comment that has been raised on this topic. And I hear your point that if we reject this curriculum, then we are looking to have it can't come back in its current form. Well, all right, then that's what I wanted in the first place anyway, but I at least wanted to do it having done all the background work, all the reading, the research, present our compelling case for the direction we want this district to move in. This to me in its current form. And again, I do want to make very clear, it was very thoughtfully done, very thoughtfully presented. I appreciate the sequence of units and all the work. I in no way want to be unappreciative of the work of staff. But at the end of the day, this is the curriculum we want to present to the children of Fairfield with the approval and signing and full knowledge of their parents and embracing of what we're doing. And I just cannot support this curriculum as is. And again, I don't want to take anything away from your staff, but I don't support this curriculum.
Any further comments by members of the board? I'll put it out to the public. Anyone who's not commented on this in previous public comment, come up now. 3 minutes. Please give us your name and address.
Nina Valenzuela, 120 Gooch Lane. I didn't want to speak because I'm an educator in the district, so I didn't want to speak. I tried to really keep that line. But I will just say that as an educator, we look to the board for guidance. I'm a world language teacher. We are sitting, we're working on our curriculum, and we look to the guidance of leadership. We all have our own ideas, we all have our own philosophies that we bring to the table, and the teachers that work in this curriculum did a lot of hard work. So it would really be a shame that you would like reject it, because they worked really hard. But no one told them in advance what the policy was, what the philosophy was. So how could they create something that most of the public would be happy with? They're just going with the Joneses like we all are, right? Technology, COVID zoomed us fast through technology. And anyone who had a child in kinder or first grade on a Zoom call could tell you how harmful that was for them. My children go to North Stratfield, and luckily they were not actually in the public school at that time. And they had FaceTime, and they were lucky, they were blessed. But as a teacher, I see and I saw during COVID the impacts that this had on kids. So what we did is, as educators, we figured it out and we got really good at technology, like super good. But I don't think we ever stopped and said, hold on, let's recalibrate. How much do they actually need at what grade level? And that's the big concern I have. I have a huge concern with it starting so early. That's great. It's a personal decision if children at home start really young. That's not what the research is saying should happen. I'm speaking about research, no judgment, because I know how hard it is to be. That's not what the research is saying. So with the research before us, have to ignore it and just say, never mind, it was already done. Oh, no one wants to talk about this. We have differences in opinion, but there's actually no policy or philosophy that we'd agreed on. So let's just keep going how we did because, you know, COVID got us that way and we're just going to keep going. So I just completely disagree that you wouldn't at least pause, because it wouldn't, you know, these are my colleagues. I don't want to speak here because I know some of them might think, oh my God, she's going to destroy our work. They worked really hard on this curriculum. But no one told them that there was this philosophical difference that parents were coming up with on screen time. So of course, this is what they present, and this is what they probably feel they have to, like kindergarten. They probably feel like they have to because the teachers don't have time to teach them or whatever the case may be. But I can tell you from personal experience, some teachers will only turn to technology. That's just their norm. And some teachers will say, oh, no, they need pen and paper. That's not okay. They're getting very different education. There needs to be a balance, and there isn't a balance. And until you guys don't figure it out and be the leaders that you need to be and tell everyone else, I don't think it's fair that you nick and pick, oh, this, yes, no, this curriculum, you know, we should take it, we shouldn't take it. You have to tell the people that you're guiding, the teachers, the students, what your philosophy is, so that then we can create using that. And I really don't agree with rejecting. It's a shame because you guys already voted on it. You should have paused it so that you could get your thoughts together and your agreements together, and then we'll follow.
That's 3 minutes, but thank you very much for coming. Any other members of the public want to comment on this item? I'll bring it back to the board. Any final comments from the board? Mrs. Guernsey?
It pains me greatly to vote against this curriculum because I think it was beautifully done. In fact, I would say it's one of the best curriculums I've seen presented to us since I've been on this board. And with that, I take responsibility for not having done this work sooner.
With that, I'll take it for a vote. All in favor of approving the grade K-5 library media curriculum? We have Mr. Krasnov, Mr. Lee, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Asa, and Mrs. Rinaldi, all opposed. Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, Mrs. Guernsey, and Mrs. Maximilian. Vote passes 5. Thank you very much. And I will just say as support tonight, I think everyone at this table is interested in having the conversation and doing that work on technology policy. And I hope that we can pour ourselves into that in the months ahead.
Happy to have it. We need to do something, but I don't think we need to be impacted on this.
So we'll move on to item C. Continued discussion and possible action regarding board comment on Fairfield's plan of conservation and development. I want to thank board members for their input on this since our last meeting. We do have a draft before you. It's a little more expansive than what I came with in December. Again, thanks to copious board input and much guidance from Mrs. Jacobson, who is the driving force and driving force behind this for some time. But I'll open it up. I'll we could put it on the floor if people are interested in it, but I can open it up to general comments at this point. Something that the 9 of us can put our signatures on and send to the TPC Commission and the Conservation Director. I think this would send an important statement about what our priorities are and what we think the town needs. Mr. Asa?
I just want to thank all of you, to Chair and Mrs. Jacobson. I know Mrs. Jacobson's been working on this work for a long time and has been very vocal. I very much support us sending a unified statement, and quite honestly, left it up to you guys, because you're better at this than I am. I have strengths and I have weaknesses, and I think you've done a great job. I would be willing to move forward tonight with, if we had to go to a vote, support.
Mrs. Flynn.
I also want to thank Mr. Peterson and Ms. Jacobson for their work on this, particularly the additions, and most of it is in red text for this document, but of actionable items for them to look at. I think that that's very meaningful. This is a very large document that encapsulates right now large pieces of our community, but does not include our schools. And to see maps that, you know, show our schools as part, I'm just so thankful for the work that you guys did and the expertise you brought to the letter. So I will reiterate my support, as Mr. Asa did, to voting and sending this off to other town bodies.
Mr. Maxon Finelli.
Echoing, not repeating those same comments. I was getting all set to dive in. I've always said there's nothing been written that I can't find something to do to it. But I decided rather than wallow in an area, not my area of expertise, I would go to a retired TPZ member and ask that person for input. And the answer I got, I'm sorry? It was hard. It was hard. I had to dig. I had to, yeah. And the feedback I got was very positive, and that stopped me cold. It's like, I don't need to, you know, do any tweaks. That it was solid. It was specific. It was actionable. It's not just lip service to the idea of, hey, think about us. And so I just wanted to add that as an extra bit of applause for the work done here.
Mr. Krasnoff.
I just want to add one more applause. I love how you took pretty much everyone's feedback and worked into one document. It's pretty impressive that there's 9 of us with usually very different opinions. And we're able to get a document that really speaks, at least from my standpoint, for all of us. So thank you all for that.
I guess with that, I'll make a motion that the board approve the second draft of the proposed BOE communication to the TPZ regarding the POZ update. I have a second. Oh,
Katie?
It's the top line.
Oh, it's in the top.
I tried to make it simple.
I didn't see. Thank you. Got it.
Kind of a second, Mr. Asa. Any further comments by members of the board? Mrs. Jacobson?
Thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you for the board for being willing to have this conversation. Thank you for TPZ for coming to a meeting to us in front of the board last fall. I hope that with this letter and with further ongoing communication and collaboration, we can address some of this board's concerns and the matters of how this address our school district and in particular our schools, to which there is some disparate impact. I wholeheartedly will support this letter. I'm appreciative that we were able to work revisions, drafts together, and bring it forth to a form that we hoped would be acceptable and amenable to the 9 members of this board. More importantly, I hope they will be amenable to our commissioners over at TPZ. They are under no requirement, obviously, to take these recommendations, but I hope that they do. And I hope that they continue to see our schools as critical infrastructure and worthy of the 10-year priority of investment that they are to this town, to our community, not only to our teachers and staff, but to all of Fairfield. So with that, I'm thankful, and I hope that we can pass this and send this off. They will consider these changes. Thank you.
Any other comments from members of the board? Any comments from members of the public?
Christine Vitale, 254 Vernon Road. Wanted to thank the board for their work on this. plan came before the Board of Selectmen, which I am a member of, and expressed some similar concerns to what is captured in this letter. And I think that we're taking action on this and speaking as a united voice will be powerful. And I look forward to seeing what the commission accepts it. So thank you for your united front on this and for putting in the effort.
Any other members of the public? I bring it back to the board. Any further comment? All right, all in favor? Mr. Krasnoff, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Asa, and Mr. Rinaldi. So that's a 9-0. So I will append your signatures, all your names to this, and I will send it off to the DPZ Commission and to the Conservation Director. Ms. Maxon Kennelly.
As a follow-up, is there any mechanism for our appearing on their January 14th agenda, even if that means, and I ask this rather than through email to put the board on notice if it's possible, that we would then start next Tuesday's budget meeting even half an hour later or something, if something like that were possible, because I always think in person is a more powerful delivery if possible.
I'll say I completely agree. Our schedules unfortunately often collide. But I will be in contact with their chair and look for opportunities. I do think an in-person delivery of this message would be impactful. I know I've been in contact with some TPZ members that have suggested some kind of even a virtual meeting. I don't know how that would work, but I'm certainly open to the idea.
And just as a follow-up, I just took a quick peek at the town calendar. Their meeting on the 14th starts at 6:30. So with with agenda placement, I'm just saying it's possible. Again,
Sorry,
if it is.
I have not seen that their agenda for that meeting was out yet, so.
Well, I'm not the agenda, I'm just on the town calendar, and it just occurred to me to check, so.
I would be very happy to deliver this in person if the opportunity presented itself. Mrs. Jacobson.
Additional follow-up, if we do get to a place where we are in a better form of collaboration or coordination per our request here in the appendix, whether through you or Mr. Testani or whomever is figuring out what that relationship might look like and how do we plan to exercise that clause. So that would be an ongoing follow-up item as we hope to solidify ongoing communication and collaboration around some of these topics and not just putting words on a piece of paper, but actually how will we operationalize that, should they desire to do.
Perfectly understandable. Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to new business. Item 8A, approval of policy 1140, Title IX, prohibition of sex discrimination and sexual harassment, with the recommended motion. The Board of Education approve policy 1140, Title IX / prohibition of sex discrimination and sexual harassment. Max Valley, seconded by Mr. Asa.
Just a couple, again, it's all in red because it's all brand new. We just needed to have it in yet another location. Again, because for those of you not as familiar with policy, they each have a certain heading and a certain topic. And this was one that was needed for community relations. And I appreciate your indulgence in my request that you do this as a one and done. But the language should look very familiar for all you careful policy readers.
Any comments, questions from members of the board? Any comments from the members of the public? Bringing it back to the board. All in favor? Mr. Krasnow, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Asa, and is unanimous. I gave you grief for that several years ago, so I will try to get better about it. All right, item 9, superintendent's report.
A couple of items outside of the budget. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware. Kindergarten registration is now open. Fairfield Public Schools are excited to welcome our incoming 25-26 kindergarten students. Parents can visit our Fairfield Public Schools website and click on registration for additional information. To that, ECC registration opens on Monday, this coming Monday, January 13th. But there will be a parent information session held right here in this room, January 29th from 7 to 8 p.m. for any prospective parents for the ECC. On Wednesday, January 29th, Fairfield Woods Middle School and Roger Ludlow Middle School PTAs, not sure what happened with Tomlinson, but they will be hosting Scott Driscoll, a renowned expert on student online safety, to present to families about the latest ways to keep your children safe in an online world. Another opportunity. Driscoll spent 33 years in law enforcement and is dedicated to informing people how they can protect themselves from the potential dangers of technology in an increasingly tech-connected world. It's at Fairfield Woods Middle School, 6:30 p.m. sharp, and all Fairfield Public School middle school parents are invited to attend. So very important, and we're back to school. Things are going great. Just want to remind everyone to just be mindful of any inclement weather notifications. We did send out prior to the vacation week all our procedures in determining what we do for delays, early dismissals, and for cancellations. Just want to remind everyone, there is no science to this. We rely on all the information that were provided from and the discussions we have with DPW, with our meteorologist that we pay a service for, and we rely on just sometimes plain luck. I'll be honest with you. So it's hard at 5 o'clock in the morning when we're all having a call in the area to determine what time things are going to begin, how they're going to come in, how quickly they're going to come in, what they're going to impact. So just please be understanding and patient. We try to do the best we can in determining our weather decisions based on all the information we gather. And again, it's not a perfect science.
Questions, comments? All right. Move on to item 10, committee/liaison reports. Mr. Lee.
Yeah, the report from the HVAC IAQ committee. This coming meeting, this Friday, the committee will listen and should approve the new Gilbane and B&L proposal. If approved, they'll be able to move forward and start Tomlinson the next phase summer. TBD.
Ms. Flynn.
Just for PTA Council, the next general meeting is on January 15th at 7 p.m. in this room. So come out and see all the good work of the PTA Council and their newly formed President's Circle, which meets biannually. Their next meeting is on February 19th at 7 p.m. in this room as well. So just for notice.
Ms. Jacobson.
Okay. Well, facilities is meeting next week, so I'll report on that the next time, but it's a very exciting night for me. Tomorrow's opening session of the General Assembly. So I'm very excited. It's like Christmas Eve. And then also, I just want to let everyone know that on Thursday night, the 9th, started 6:30 p.m. Our delegation is having a legislative forum and at the Sacred Heart University Mater Theater on Park Avenue. So if anybody wants to go and just ask questions or raise any issues, that is an opportunity coming up this Thursday night at that location. So I will be sure to let everyone know anything interesting that comes along. Thank you.
Ms. Guernsey.
Wanted to thank this board for supporting the formation of our curriculum committee. We had our first meeting on Friday, December 20th. Mrs. Rinaldi, Mr. Krasnoff, and I are the members of the committee. For people in the public that don't know, and we're really looking forward to working with staff on these issues. We set 4 meeting dates and we'll add an additional date or dates as needed.
Ms. Maxine.
From Parks and Rec, we had a very short meeting. Our last meeting was very short, but I thought it deserved some recognition that we had the retirement of David Weber of Parks and Rec, who is also a former Board of Ed member. His retirement represents 23 years of volunteer service to the town. And I just think that deserves a shout out. So thank you, Mr. Weber, for all, specifically to Parks and Rec, specifically to the Board of Ed, specifically to whatever else he was on, which I forget the list, but again, just wanted to recognize his work.
We really appreciate what we do until you sit in the chair. So yeah. I'll say we had obviously Finance Committee last week. We got a preview of the budget. It was largely as advertised. I mentioned this earlier, but in case anyone else didn't hear it today, I was invited up to Dwight by the first selectman to shadow the group of potential consultants who are thinking about bidding on the working group facilities project. It was interesting. I saw the Dwight boiler room for the first time. That was fun. There were, I've seen a lot of boiler rooms now. It's interesting. But the response to the RFP, it seems to be pretty good. There were 16 people represented, 16 companies represented there. The close of the bid, I believe, is the 21st. So we'll see how many wind up bidding, but there is interest in the project, which was nice to see. All right, and with that, more comment? Commented out. Public comment.
One question about the tour. Did they just tour the building or they toured the whole site?
We went up to the field. We pointed down to the leaching field, looked outside at the septic system. So it was pretty comprehensive. Angelos did a good job leading the people through the building.
Thank you.
Public comment, anyone who wants to comment on Mr. McGarry?
Hello, Mick McGarry, Fairfield Education Association. First, just want to invite the chair to see ward spoilers. I know I might be biased, but I think we're the best boilers. It actually our underground system of tunnels, and it's actually pretty interesting down there. But also, I just wanted to come to speak to support something the superintendent said earlier in his budget presentation. Over the course of several years, Fairfield's compensation for teachers did start to slip in comparison with our competing towns. But under this new contract, our turnover rate is down remarkably. And if you look at the people who are leaving, both look at the numbers and anecdotally, the few years after COVID, prior to this contract, we were losing veteran teachers moving to other districts, and that has essentially ended. And most of the turnover that we're seeing now is sort of the natural turnover you get. We all know the numbers, the majority of teachers don't, about half teachers don't last the first 5 years. And, within the first 5 to 7 years, there's a lot of movement, finding a permanent home or, deciding that this is their career and lifestyle. So our turnover numbers have really improved remarkably. And we're much more competitive now amongst our competing towns and neighboring towns. So I just wanted to support what the superintendent said before, and I'm looking forward to a interesting and thoughtful discussion about our budget process. So thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Seeing none, back to the board. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Lee. All in favor? Vote is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone.
Our book.